We are back live here on our world-famous Jiggy Jaquar Radio broadcast. We have a tremendous guest with us today here on our big program. Steve Snyder is back with us. He is the amazing speaker and author of Shot Down, the true story of pilot Howard Snyder and the crew of the B-17 Susan Ruth. And you can get more information at stevesnyderauthor.com. And Steve joins us today here on our big program. So, Steve, thanks for doing this, my friend. You have quite the book here, and I'm glad we were able to get you back on today.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be back.
So, this book, what's been some feedback since we last had you on about a year ago?
Oh, well, it's, well... Obviously, 2020, things have changed quite a bit. Normally, I'd be traveling all around the United States, signing copies of my book at air shows, or making a lot of presentations to all sorts of different groups. But come March 15th, all that ceased, and
yes.
So I've mainly been doing a lot of interviews this year, either podcast interviews or radio interviews. And kind of something new that happened was I, along with my youngest son, Clayton, we produced a 13-minute documentary short film about the book and our research in Belgium that's been in a number of film festivals across the country and won a few awards. So that was exciting, although not exciting as it could have been if we could have attended those film festivals live, because most of them all have been, streaming.
That is tremendous.
So it's been a different year.
So you've got this incredible book here. We are talking with Steve Snyder today here on our big program. He joins us live here in our broadcast. He's a Air Force historian. He's an incredible author. So your book, this is definitely a heck of a book. What made you write this book? What was the idea behind this?
Okay, well, growing up, I knew the basics of my dad's World War II history. I knew he was a B-17 bomber pilot. He was stationed in England with the 8th Air Force. His plane was named the Susan Ruth after my oldest sister, who was 1 year old at the time that he went overseas. And he flew bombing missions over Europe. And on February 8th of 1944, his plane was shot down. And after he bailed out, he was missing in action for 7 months, but he evaded capture and eventually got back to England. But it wasn't until I retired in 2009 that I really had the time to delve into my dad's World War II history in more detail. At that time, I had no intention of writing a book. My parents had kept a lot of material from the war years, and I just wanted to go through that and organize it and learn some more details. And there were two items that were really significant. One was a diary that my dad wrote while he was missing in action in Belgium after his plane was shot down. And it's absolutely riveting. It goes into detail about what happened when the plane was attacked by German fighters. And then the other item were all the letters that my dad had written to my mother that she kept before he was shot down. And reading those letters was just absolutely fascinating. And I became fascinated with the story of my dad and his crew, and it became my passion. And I did all this research on the internet, finding relatives of his crew members to get information, reading books. And finally, 3 years into my research, I just came to the conclusion that the story of my dad and his crew was so unique and so compelling that it needed to be told. People needed to know about it. And so I decided to write a book.
The book is called Shot Down. Steve Snyder joins us today here on our big program, and he is a tremendous author. So, with some of the different things that had gone on with this book, what are folks saying about the book? What's some feedback you've gotten on this?
Well, the feedback has really been wonderful. I'm very fortunate and blessed. The book's won over 25 book awards. It has a 5-star reader review rating on Amazon. And a few of the most common remarks or comments that I hear, one, it should be turned into a movie. The other is that it's very personal because there's over 200 time period photographs in the book, so you can visualize everything that you're reading about. And also there's excerpts from letters of members of the crew and relatives of the crew written in 1944 that make it very personal. But people say that you almost feel like you're in the plane when it's being attacked. It really puts you right there in the cockpit. B-17 had a 10-man crew. 5 of the members of my dad's crew made it back home, and 5 of them did not. So it's
wow.
There's a lot of there's both tragedy and in the book as well as happy outcomes for half the crew.
We've got a tremendous guest of this today. Steve Snyder's with us. He has got Shot Down. It is the latest from him, and he joins today here in a broadcast. And Shot Down has a 5-star reader review rating on Amazon and has received 25 book awards. Talk to me about some of the different book awards that this book has obtained, my friend.
Oh, well, most of the book's been out now for a few years. Most of the awards it received were near the beginning. And to be honest with you, off the top of my head, I can't really remember what the specific names of the awards are. All that information's on my website, which you mentioned a few minutes ago, stevesnyderauthor.com. But they're from various reader, either blogs or book contests that go on throughout the year that I entered the book in, either awards for being nonfiction, historical books, military books, things of that nature.
Steve Snyder with us today, Shot Down. That is the latest from him, and he joins today here on our big program. He's a 8th Air Force historian and author. Shot Down is the latest book from Steve. Why are people so into World War II, World War I? Is it because that the world basically came together to fight a common enemy? Is that why everybody's kind of fixated on that, and there really hasn't been anything like that since that has happened?
That's right. There was no other event in history that affected more people than World War II. It affected, almost every country was involved. 60 million people died. Millions more were wounded. Millions more were left homeless and displaced. And World War II changed the course of the United States and the world forever.
Yeah.
And so the impact that it had on our country, because if we hadn't have won that war, we wouldn't be enjoying all the freedoms that we have today. We'd be controlled by either Nazi Germany or Japan. In fact, there's interesting streaming series called Man in the High Castle. It's kind of interesting.
Yes.
It's on Netflix.
Yes.
And it is a scenario under which Germany and Japan won the war, and then the United States is divided up and controlled by those two countries. And you see there that the U.S. is occupied and under the thumb of the Nazis. So it changed, as I said, the course of the world and maintained freedoms that we enjoy today. And the men who fought and died are without doubt, in my mind anyway, the greatest generation. And their sacrifices just must never be forgotten. So I think that has a wide appeal to people to read about such an amazing time, and not only the people who fought in the war, but the United States. The country really came together, and they rallied around and supported the war and sacrificed here at home. There was rationing here at home, people, gas rationing,
yes.
food rationing, rubber rationing. And so everyone was involved in the war effort. The whole country was involved in it. And unfortunately, these days, the country is not united very much at all. So that was a trying time, but historic and a victorious time as well.
Steve Snyder with us today. He has got an incredible book. It is called Shot Down, and he joins us today here on our big program here on iHeartRadio. Also, AM/FM, 247.com, KFRK in Denver as well, and 990 WBOB in Rhode Island, among others. You can get the complete list at our website, JIGGYJHGYR.com. So Shot Down has got just amazing, amazing photos interspersed throughout the book. How did you track down some of these photos, and what was the process in choosing some of these to go in the book?
Okay, again, I'm so fortunate because many of these photos were taken by Belgian people during the war in 1944. A lot of them were sent to my dad after the war by the Belgian people who helped hide him from the Germans from being captured.
Yeah.
And then also I got a number of photos from really two sources. I probably wouldn't have written the book if it wasn't for two Belgian gentlemen, Jacques Lowe and Paul Delahaye. They were young boys during the war and were greatly affected by it. And later in life, they became local historians, and they interviewed all these Belgian people and members of the Belgium underground about events that took place involving my dad and his crew, and they documented their testimony. And they gave me unbelievably detailed information and photos that would have been lost forever without their dedicated research. So I owe them a huge debt. And it's interesting that a lot of these photographs of buildings and farmhouses and homes, those places are still there today because this all took place just north of the French border in southern Belgium, which is a very rural area, mostly farmland. It really hasn't changed at all since the war, even for several hundred years. So these houses and homes and buildings where my dad and other members of his crew stayed in are still there. And I've been in rooms where in those buildings, which is absolutely amazing. I get goosebumps just talking about it. I've been to Belgium 6 times doing research and, finding all these locations and visiting all of these locations where the events took place. And it's remarkable.
So these photos and the book itself, have you ever thought about doing a follow-up or something similar to that?
Well, a little bit. Actually, my wife tells me I should write a book about writing a book because I had no writing background or experience whatsoever.
Wow.
So I didn't have any training. And then I learned a lot because I published my book independently. I formed a one-person limited liability company called Seabreeze Publishing, which is the name of the street that I live on in Southern California.
That is fantastic.
And then I contract with all these independent professionals to publish the book, as far as cover design, interior layout, editing, printing the book. I use a printer back in Michigan, and I did. Fortunately, I had a 40-year career in sales. So
that's great. That's great.
Once you write a book, that's one thing, but people don't know about it. No one's going to read it. And so I had that experience of being in sales, and so I really just continued my career experience in selling and marketing and promoting the book, in getting it out, getting it to have museums, air museums carry it. And get reviews online or other places, and get speaking engagements. So that's really given the book a lot of exposure. So my wife says I should write a book about all that.
About writing all, yes, and that would be very entertaining. I think about all the different things that you went through to bring this thing to life. So yeah, I agree with her. You should think about putting that book together because that's your journey, especially someone who's never written a book. And then you wrote a book, and you won a bunch of damn awards for it, too, after never having a writer's background, is amazing.
Yeah, well, the story of my dad and his crew is really just so incredible. It's all based on firsthand testimony by the people who were involved in the events that took place, either members of my dad's crew and, of course, my dad, because he's one of the 5 that survived.
Yeah.
These members of the Belgian resistance, declassified military documents, and I even found the German Luftwaffe pilot that shot down my dad's plane and interviewed him for the book.
Wow.
So it even has a perspective from the German side of it.
That is amazing. Well, Steve, this has definitely been fun. Steve Snyder's been our guest, and I look forward to chatting with you here very soon. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for coming back on the program, my man.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. It's always fun talking with you, and I wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a Happy New Year. Hopefully, 2021 will get back to normal.
Yes, a little bit different than this year, for one thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Steve. Have yourself a wonderful day, sir. Appreciate it. There he goes, Steve Snyder. And we are going to take a brief time out. And when we come back, we have got more coming up on the other side. It is the world famous Jiggy Jaquar Radio broadcast.